In this video I'm going to talk about the colour film, and so I've opened a design that comes in the software, and I'll put up which design it is for you. And because I opened new from selected, it's opened as grouped. So if I go out of true view and I decide to select something, the whole design will select. You can select it as any part of the design by clicking on that part, but if the design is grouped, the whole design will select. When you're not in artistic view, it will all turn pink. And to deselect, you click off. You can also select in the colour film. The colour film is down here. So if I click on any one of these window panes in the colour film, the whole design will select as well, because it is still grouped. You can select individual items while the design is still grouped by holding down your Alt key on your keyboard while you select. Now I've got my colour film in colour blocks mode. You can see that because I've got blocks of colour down the side here. So if I click on any one of these window panes in the colour film while it is in colour block mode, that whole colour block will select, not just one individual item. But if I hold my Alt key down and click on that colour block, only that colour block will select, not the whole design. So you can see that these outlines here and here are selected, and I've got my little selection handles showing the whole area that's selected. So even though the selection handles also surround other parts of the design, it's only the design parts that turn pink. Now if you're in artistic view, if I go back to artistic view, you won't see the pink, but you will still see the handles, and you will see in the colour film that that is selected. So you don't need to ungroup a design to be able to select individual objects. Now, as I said, we've selected a whole colour block because we were in colour block mode in the colour film. If I want to select an individual object, I'll click off so nothing's selected, and then hold down my Alt key, and I can click on a particular object. I'm going to go back out of artistic view so that you can actually see which object I've clicked on, and I'm going to click on this one. And as you can see, I've only selected one object. And if you look in the colour film, and even if you scroll up and down, because I'm in colour blocks mode, none of these squares have turned blue to show that it's selected, because I've only selected one object, not a whole colour block. And click off so nothing's selected. Now you can of course ungroup the design so that you can select individual objects in the colour film, and to do that all you do is right click somewhere on the design and a pop-up window will come, and you can click on ungroup, and now all the objects are individual, and I don't have to hold down my Alt key to select the object. I can just click on an object and it will select. Grouping the design is a good idea if you don't want to change the order of the stitching or anything like that accidentally. So if you keep it grouped, there's other advantages to keeping the design grouped as well, but sometimes you want to actually ungroup it so you can separate out individual items in the design. Okay, I'm going to click off. Now, as I said, I'm in colour blocks mode. There are two modes in the colour film. You have the colour blocks mode, or if you click on this show objects item, it looks like a little film strip. It will actually show each individual object. So now when I select this object, it will also show that highlighted in blue, and it actually jumps to that object for you. You can also select the individual objects from the colour film. So I can click on this one and that object is selected. When you click on another object, the previous object becomes deselected. So every time you left click, the object that you've selected changes. If you want to select more than one object, then you need to hold down your Control key, and then you can select other objects. Until you're happy. So as you can see, those objects are selected, the other objects are not selected in the colour film. So we've got two ways of selecting objects, and also we can select objects whether the design is grouped or not. Now, there are other functions for the colour film. So, when nothing is selected, all the other functions are greyed out. But if you select the whole design, or even part of the design, you will see, so I've just selected one object here, you will see they are no longer greyed out. Some of them are, but these arrows here are no longer greyed out. Now what these arrows allow you to do is to move these objects in the stitch order, and that can be important when you're actually digitizing. It's not so important when you've opened an individual a pre-done design, because you don't very often want to change the stitch order, because whoever designed it has worked all that out. But if you're creating your own design, you may want to change the stitch order. So they're pretty obvious what they do, but I'm going to actually start a new design to show you what they all do. Okay, so let's create a design quickly. So I'm just going to go to Auto Digitize in the toolbox and insert artwork. And I've got something down here, a really simple daisy, and open that. And we'll grab our magic wand and we'll prepare the artwork. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colours, which is all we want. So this was a nice clean EMF file, so it's picked up the colours really well. We may not do the black outline, but we'll see. We'll go OK. And now we've got our hatched areas. So let's click on, make sure we've got a fill stitch and click on the daisy flowers. Now I'm going to deliberately click random petals. I'm not going to go round clockwise. I mean, you would probably go round clockwise, so you'd have them in a logical order, but I'm deliberately not. And we'll do the centre, we'll do the green parts of the leaves, and as you can see, I'm not putting them in any particular order. Now we're left with the black outline. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to choose Magic Wand Centerline and see how we go with that. And I've got the outline there. And it turned it pink. So I don't think I got the actual black outline. So let's undo that and zoom in even further. And now I've got the black outline. Okay, so now I should have some black stitching around the outline. Let's escape out of our tool and hide the image. So we come up here to our bitmaps and hide the image. And yes, there we go. And so let's have a look over in our colour film. Now I'm in individual objects at the moment. If I was in colour blocks, remember we can click on here to show our colour blocks. When you're in colour blocks, if you've got an image in the design, even if you've hidden it, you will see this little sailboat image. When you're in individual objects, the image will look like the image looks like. So this is the image here. We've got all our petals, we've got our centre, we've got our green parts, and then we've got one object for the outline. So that's done a pretty good job for the outline. It's connected it all together as one group of objects. Let's go to our individual objects and scroll down, and yes, it's one object, the outline, so that's pretty good. Okay, now we've seen before we can look at the design as true view here with the stitches, or we can go out of True View and see it as Design View. When you're in Design View, you will actually see the jump stitches if you look very closely, and you can see here I've got jumps across from one petal to the other because of the order I have the petals. Remember, I randomly went across from one side to the other, and that created a jump across here. And we can see the order that we've stitched in by going up here to our travel toolbar. We can jump to the start of the design by clicking on the little jump to start icon at the top here, the little tulip, and then click on the arrow travel backwards. We're going to travel backwards to the start, and the whole design will go grey. I'm just going to zoom in to fit so the whole design is in the window. Okay, now we want to travel object by object, so that is this little icon here. Jump by object, and we're going to go forward one object at a time. So the first object to stitch is this pink object here, and you can see it highlight. It's also, if we look in the colour film, it's the first object here. And then we can go to the next object, and that is this object here. So the objects are in the order, stitch order in the colour film. We can keep going through to see, and you can see how the jump stitches go to the next object. And then the next one is the yellow center, because that's the order we digitized them in. Okay, well, let's jump right to the end. So we go to jump to start and end, and jump to the end, so everything's now stitched in the image. So it's not very logical to stitch this petal here and then jump over and stitch this petal here. We want to stitch in a logical order. And as I said before, we can move things in the colour film to change the stitch order. So we need something selected in order to move it. Now, let's assume that we want to stitch this object first. So we don't need to move that because it's at the start. But let's say we want to stitch this object next. We need to find that object in the colour film and move it to the right position. So we can select it, and the colour film will jump to that object. Notice the previous object is no longer selected. We're only selecting one at a time. So this object needs to go second in the stitch order because we want it to stitch after this one. So we need to move it up. So these icons are now available. We can't go back one colour because it's the first colour, but we can go forward one colour, we can go back one object or forward one object, we can go back to the start, or we can move to the end. You can also drag and drop, but as you can see, I would need to drag right up to here. Which is a bit difficult because it's right down here. If I only needed to move it back one, I could pick it up, drag it and drop it, and that would move it back one object. But I can use the back one object button to do the same thing, and it will move. Watch the colour film, it will move it. I'll move it up a bit like this. It will move it back one object each time I click until I get it into the right position. Okay, now it's second in the stitch order, so now it's going to stitch from this object to this object. And we can check that again by coming up here to click off so nothing's selected, click on our jump to start and end, go to the start, and now click on object by object and go first object, second object. So now we're stitching in a logical order, and the reason you do that is so that you can avoid as many jump stitches as possible. If we look closely though, we can actually, no, I can't see the jump. Yes, I can just see the jump stitch. The jump stitch is actually coming from here over to here. That's to do with where the object starts stitching, but we'll come back to that later. So the idea is to use these tools to get the stitch order right. Now, I'm going going to stitch to the end. Sorry, jump by start and end and go to the end so everything's stitched, and zoom to fit. Another quick way, if you've got a lot of objects to put into order, is to use the sequence by selects, which is this 1, 2, 3. Now it's greyed out because I haven't selected anything. Remember, we can select more than one object by holding our control key down. So if I select the first object, hold my control key down and select the other objects in the order I want them to stitch. So I'm holding my control key down the whole time and clicking around in the order I want them to stitch. Now you can see the 1, 2, 3 sequence by selects is available. If I click on that, it will automatically sequence those objects in the order that I clicked on them. So now if we go to our stitch order, object by object, the first object is this one, and then if I keep clicking, it will go around and show you in the order it will stitch. Now let's zoom down to what happens next. The yellow comes next, and that is what I would like. I'd like the yellow to stitch on top of the pink petals, so that's fine. Then we've got the next object. Let's just keep going with our travel tool. The next object to stitch is this green object, and then if I go one more, it jumps to the leaf, and then the next one is the stem. Now that's not very logical either, and also I would like the green stem to be underneath the pink flower so that the petals are sitting on top of the green. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, select all the green. Now if I put the colour film back into colour blocks, I can easily select all the green and then move that to the start. So we've got move to start and move to end available. So now the green is sitting underneath. Now the next thing I'd like to do is change it so that the whole green stem stitches before the leaf. So we need to go back to show objects, and we can see here that the leaf needs to stitch last. So we're going to select the leaf. I can select it here in the colour film and move it forward one object, and that's moved it to after the stem. So I've got the small bit of the top of the stem stitching first. Whoops, I've accidentally clicked on the outline. I've got this one stitching first, and if I look in the colour film, I can see the long stem stitches next. And you can also travel with your tab button on your keyboard. So if I tab, it will go to the next object. So if you only want to look in the colour film at a few objects, that's sometimes quicker than coming up to the travel toolbar. You just need to play around and use whatever works best for you at the time. And then of course we've got our leaf. So now we've got, if I go back to colour blocks, we've got the green stem, the pink petals, the yellow centre and the outline. So that's the order I want to stitch it in. The other tools, so we've got move back one object, move forward one object, move back one colour. So assuming I wanted the yellow centre to stitch before the petals, I could select that yellow and I could move it back one colour, and that will put it before the pink petals. I'll just take it back again. If I only moved it back one object, you can see it's gone between the petals. So these petals will stitch, then the yellow, then the last petal. So I'll just make it go forward one object, and so in this case I want to go back a whole colour. I'll put it back, it was just for demonstrating that. And then of course we've got move to the start and move to the end. We've done the sequence by selects. The other last tool is sequence by colour. So let's show that by putting that yellow back again. Okay, so I've got the yellow stitching before the petals, and I don't want that. So I want a sequence by colour. So I'm going to select the whole design because I want to put the whole design in a colour order. And to do that, I can go Control A on my keyboard and then click on the sequence by colour icon, and your little dialog box will open, and you can choose your colours here. So I can choose the yellow and move it down and go OK. So that's another way of getting the objects in the right stitch order. Now the yellow is stitching after the flower again. Now of course I could have gone forward one colour here, but had it been several colours up, the sequence by colour would be a better option. So as I said before, there's lots of tools to do the same thing, but it's finding the one that's the most efficient for the particular job you're doing.